And ladies and gentlemen, we are now live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and sportinarium.com/player, talking all things related here to the weekend that was in the NFL. And what a last, I'd say, 3 or 4 hours, especially when it comes to our New York Football Giants. And we're going to get into that, plus all the Black Monday firings, and set the tables for us for Friday's show. We'll pick the games here in the NFL Super Wild Card Weekend. We're going to do that with 4 of my guys. That is, of course, Justin Gianelli from the Baseball Banter Show, Patrick Trotty, and Chris Pizzea of the Talking Rivals Show. And, of course, Chris does a phenomenal job also with us for our Liftoff Jets. And Donald Stewart, who's with us from the Pinstripe Chronicles, also does a great job writing for our New York Knicks and among many other things. And, guys, what an eventful last few hours, and we picked a great time to be live. And first of all, Donald, congratulations.
Oh, thank you, God. There is a God. What a beautiful day. Oh, what a relief. Oh, my God. Yeah, it was impossible to bring him back, though. I mean, he literally talked himself out of a job. Because, remember, it was only about 4 weeks ago, where John Mara, it was leaked that John Mara believed he was the next Bill Parcells. But, which is incredible. But what Joe Judge managed to do over these past 2 weeks, I've never seen anything like it. He unraveled. He completely unraveled. It beyond belief. It was like how to lose a job in 10 days. I mean, it started off with a press conference where he just, 11-minute litany of all his insecurities and then lies and then starting to call out 2 coaches that are hired elsewhere, which was terrible for the franchise, and then bring up golf clubs and vacations and all this stuff, and this idea of a culture 4-12, which there's no such thing as a culture when you're 4-12. Do you know what I mean? That it's like there's no culture. That's just a losing culture. So that was ridiculous. So he embarrassed himself with that to the point where you can't even contemplate bringing him back. But then that wasn't even his final, goodbye. The final goodbye was victory formation multiple times during the game on Sunday. I mean, I actually had to double take because I was kind of switching between Red Zone and the Giants. Watching the Giants is impossible. You can't watch it. So I was watching the Red Zone. Then I switched back and I saw the Giants kneel. And I'm like, oh, is it the end of the game already? Have I had a time lapse? And then I looked at the score and it was like 3-0 Redskins. And I'm like, what? Second quarter, 5 minutes to go, and it's second down. What the hell's going on? I couldn't believe it. And then I just realized that Joe Judge has actually just quit. He's quit on the team, and he's a liar because his original press conference, he told us all, we're going to, be blue collar. We're going to punch you in the mouth. We're going to give it everything we got, all this nonsense. It was all lies because he quit. He quit right there. I've never seen anybody do it ever before in my life. Where successive quarterback sneaks because he knew that he couldn't get 10 yards. It's embarrassing. So,
well, let me ask you a question real quick. And all that, I'm with you. Certainly, we've been talking about it here the past 4 or 5 weeks. And it's good to have you on because we'll get the other guy's perspective in a second. But I want to get your perspective because you're a Giants fan. Going into this morning, because they didn't make the move yesterday. And obviously, we know Black Monday is always a day where coaches get fired. And Boomer Esiason, I'm listening to him this morning. And he thought that Joe Judge was going about today as if he was going to be the New York Giants head coach. Going into this morning or this afternoon, this evening where you are, did you think the Giants were actually going to make the move?
I thought what the Giants were going to do is they were going to keep him on the hook until they hired a general manager. And then the general manager would make the call. That's what I thought that they were going to do. And I read an article by Rosenblatt on NJ.com where it was kind of like that was the idea where they kind of want the general manager to make the call. But it's a backwards way of doing it because why would you have him on the hook like that and have to lumber another general manager with this situation? It didn't make any sense. You want a fresh start. And from what I'm understanding, the Giants did their due diligence today where they contacted all the general managers who they're interested in and interviewing, and none of them wanted Joe Judge at all. None of them. Not a
How
single
could
one
you
of
have
them.
wanted him back
So
after this?
exactly. So basically the decision was made for them. So going into this morning, I didn't believe that the Giants were going to fire him. I didn't think it was going to happen right now, but I thought eventually it had to happen because it was an impossible situation. So.
All right, let me get Justin Gianelli in here because Justin's been talking about this for a while, and Justin's always got an interesting perspective. And I'll get to the Talking Rivals guys here in a second. But Justin, I mean, give me your thoughts here on how this all went down, and were you surprised that the Giants put the axe toward Joe Judge and his tenure as coach?
I wasn't surprised at all. I didn't like the way the Giants went about it because I think once we all knew that Dave Gettleman was no longer going to be the general manager, to me, the writing is on the wall for Joe Judge because how can you sell a general manager when he's interviewing for the position? Hey, you have to take on Joe Judge, who, by the way, just finished up 10-23 in his 2 seasons as head coach. And I did not like the notion that there was the thought that they were going to hold on to Joe Judge until they hired a general manager and then let him make the decision whether he wants to fire Judge or keep Judge for 1 season. Because that wouldn't have worked. Because if you kept Judge for this season under a new general manager, what does that say to any coach who wants to work under Judge as he hires, new coaches to the staff? They're not going to want to be a lame duck 1-year coach. So I thought that they needed to just clean it all Monday, let Gettleman go, fire Joe Judge, and just completely start over because you saw 2 other situations where both GM and coach were fired. And they're already past square one, these teams. So you would have been behind the 8 ball in hiring a coach, and the process would have taken that much longer because your list would have grown shorter and shorter because a certain coach could have maybe gone to Chicago or go to Miami or
we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Or Jacksonville. So they would have just been totally behind the 8 ball. I mean, it was only fitting, and especially the way the last few weeks have gone. I mean, let's put it this way: Joe Judge talked himself out of the job. I mean, all he had to do was not say much in the press conferences, and the excuses are there. You're playing with a backup. You're playing with a third-string quarterback who are clearly not capable NFL quarterbacks with Mike Glennon and Jake Fromm, and the excuses could have been, okay, you didn't have Daniel Jones for the whole season, so we'll buy that. But again, like I said, once you told the fan base that Dave Gettleman's not returning in 2022, that should be it right there. Have we not learned from what happened with the Jets in firing Mike Tannenbaum and hiring John Idzik?
Oh, God. I think I brought that up in
Rex
one of
Ryan
the
for
shows.
2 years.
Yeah, I brought that up. No, listen, it was a bizarre situation, and I got to give a shout-out to John Gonzalez because he somehow found a way to be able to tune into us. That's kind of a running joke here off the air, but obviously huge shout-out to John, of course, in his Sports Authority group, which has been a big supporter of ours on Facebook, and John chimes in here and says, this is what you get when you hire an unknown special teams coach. He wasn't qualified to be an NFL head coach. You get what you pay for when it comes to this garbage. I mean, Donald's agreeing. So
but you know what? John Harbaugh was a
100%.
special teams coach as well. That's not really a fair take. John Harbaugh was a special teams coach, and look what he's become.
And there was an article somewhere. I should have saved it, but there was an article that showed that the special team coaches have the best record of all the head coaches that
because they work with the whole team because of the players of special teams.
Yeah, so.
Well, I mean,
I don't think that's a problem.
It's debatable. I mean, but I think John's main point is that he didn't have head coaching experience. I mean, Patrick, we do know that Joe Judge comes from your school and, of course, the New England Patriots coaching tree family, which obviously in itself has been a mixed bag. And we'll get to some of those coaches, I'm sure, here in a little while once again. But give me your thoughts on how this all went down with Joe Judge and your overall thoughts.
I mean, I agree with what Donald said and what Justin said. And, I was listening to some sports radio today, and it's just he talked his way out of it. If he just handed the ball off on 2nd and 3rd down instead of the victory formation, if he just said, next man up, we've had injuries, no
Hey,
excuses.
Donald might be happy he did that. Donald might be happy. But he's a Giants fan. Donald might be happy about that.
I was as far as some of these fans that are saying, who's never qualified for a job. You're never gonna. You have to take a chance once in a while on a first-time head coach. So I'm not going to go that far as John Gonzalez, but he was not I don't think he was the ideal coach. I mean, we could talk about Belichick's disciples failing, and I mean, if you're up for a head coaching job, there's usually a reason why you're available. So, I mean, I think that it's better that they got rid of him. I would have liked them to do it yesterday and just kind of.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I have to say. Because again, listening to talk radio like I did while I was working overnight,
it seems reactionary.
Yeah, you almost thought like, okay, they didn't make the move, and everybody made their move either Sunday, obviously with Denver, and then yesterday, because that's how you always do it. And Boomer Esiason made the point, well, you do it Monday to give everybody a chance to get jobs if they want to stay in the league. So that's why it was kind of a bizarre situation here, and I'm sure I'll get more takes from John Gonzalez here in a second. So shout out to John as always. I
just wonder if John Mara folded to the fan pressure and. Because look,
talk radio was like the last 24 hours
is the home, and WFAN is the home of the New York Giants. So that's their home station, and all day long, it was about how could they have not done anything? Right, because right at 9 a.m. Right at 9 a.m. Matt Nagy.
And usually the national media is like a
gone.
week afterwards. They picked it up. They've already been on it. They picked it up within hours. Like, you got to get rid of Judge. It's a fait accompli. Yeah. He's done. Yeah. Dumpster fire.
We've been talking about it here pretty much for the 6 weeks that the Giants collapsed here and played the way they did. And everybody said here, I asked everybody, whether it was Sharman, Billy McInerney who's not here, the Brute Force Brad Weiss who's not here, Kyle Christopher, even anybody else that's been on here, that the Giants weren't going to get rid of Joe Judge. So clearly, again, talk radio, if you listen to any talk radio here in the tri-state area the past 24 hours, and I almost never listened to talk radio, so for fun, I'm like, you know what, let me listen to one of my competitors, which is obviously WFAN, because, Sportzwire, we're number one, but obviously WFAN, they're one of our competitors, and the calls, my God, I mean, you could not take a temperature, and even 3-4 o'clock in the morning, I'm working, guys, last night at 4 o'clock in the morning, the call lines were lit up here. I mean, Chris, I got to get you in here. This was, again, a very bizarre situation on how it all went down, but Giants fans still got to be happy. They definitely got their late Christmas gift. So, Chris, give me your thoughts here on how this went down, and what's your overall thoughts?
Yeah, I think you guys are right. And I think at the beginning, when they first announced that he was going to stay, I thought, you know what? Maybe their thought process at that time was, let's start over next year. We'll give him one more year with a new GM, and we'll start over with Daniel Jones being healthy week one, fresh start. Maybe the receivers will be healthy for the first time all year, week one, and let's give it a shot. And then if they, crap out again, 4-13, whatever, then we'll make the move. But maybe that's what their initial thought was. But towards the end, I mean, like you guys said, between the talking himself out of the job and basically coaching himself out of the job too. I mean, it was just awful decisions. And,
well said.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, listen, we could give him excuses too, because he lost his starting quarterback, and his starting quarterback wasn't that good to begin with. So that's one. Right. And then the injuries just piled up on the receivers. I mean, they never had, when their receivers are all healthy, that's a pretty good wide receiver group, let's be honest. But I don't think they've ever been fully healthy.
I was going to say, did we really see them for more than 3 games at a time?
I'm giving him a little bit of listen, there's no excuse. You still got to go out there, because the Jets had to go out there and they put out a much better product than that.
How about the Lions? The Lions finished the season.
Lions,
thank you.
And who was the Lions?
The Lions were opening the playbook, double reverse.
And who was the Lions quarterback?
Exactly. It wasn't Goff.
Oh, God.
No, even if it was Goff, we know how good he is. You know what I mean? He's not that good. So, I mean, we could give him all the excuses in the world, but when you see a team starting to quit on their coach, that's a sign of, all right, we got to change. I mean, and by the end of the year, it just seemed like they were quitting on him. It was.
Well, that's what made his press
I think
conference.
It goes back to the draft pick, of not even Daniel Jones, of Saquon.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
I think
where
Gettleman.
That's where it went
being-
down immediately.
Letting Gettleman retire is
That was a joke. You know,
Yeah.
I'm listening to this overnight. How could you let him retire, quote unquote? Did you see
know what
he did
Saquon
to
was
his
for,
team?
though? Saquon was more for Eli, right? They wanted to squeeze out maybe one more year with Eli. Let's give him Saquon Barkley.
They wanted to do what Pittsburgh did with Najee Harris and Big Ben.
Right.
Yeah.
And we see
sweeping
how
the
that's kind of
playoffs
worked out too. I mean,
but-
Pittsburgh's limping into the playoffs.
But also,
They made it though.
also
You know
too,
what?
They
like,
made it,
They
man.
made it, right.
Tomlin's an unbelievable coach.
But also,
like Tomlin.
that's too. They got the coach, but also too, there's more criticism for taking the running back second as opposed to 24th.
Right.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, 24th is not the worst. It's not the worst spot in the world to take a running back.
No.
I mean, can you find running backs later on? I mean, look at Michael Carter.
Of course.
But there was no reason to take a running back second overall. And to Chris's point about the Lions, I mean, look at the Texans and Jaguars on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Look at those teams playing for absolutely nothing. The Jaguars go out there and beat up
Lions get a win. We just mentioned the Lions.
the Lions.
Packers.
Goff plays what off on
Seattle.
Sunday.
Listen, Seattle finished strong.
I mean,
Dan
Rodgers
Graziano-
came out, but
Miami.
Dan Graziano said that Giant players weren't buying into Joe Judge's system. So
You think?
what
You
Joe
think?
well, exactly, but that's what obviously proved what Joe Judge was talking about in his press conference was all lies. The players didn't believe in him. There was no culture. The players did not believe in him. And so they didn't believe in his system. And it's also true because he wasn't running a system. It was like high school. It was like JV high school. It was like, I don't even know what it was. It wasn't even a proper football system. It was just nonsense.
I was just going to say the same thing.
Negative yards.
And I gotta get John
He
Gonzalez
screams high
in here.
school coach Friday
Yeah.
night, screaming his lungs off,
Exactly.
42-0.
I gotta get John Gonzalez in because he's got a lot here, and I think some of it for what will lead into the next part of the discussion here. But first, John disagrees with Justin. He says here the big difference between John Harbaugh and Joe Judge is that the Harbaughs come from a lineage of coaches. The fathers, the sons, they are known in the coaching circles. Joe Judge was an intern with the Patriots. No comparison whatsoever. That's his first response. Second thought he has here was Joe Judge was the second coming of Ray Hanley. That's a good one. That was a good one. Second coming of Ray Hanley. Somewhat similar. And then he also says, well, he mentioned Jim Harbaugh last week. Yes, you definitely did, John. No question. Credit to you. And then kind of going into the next part of discussion here, he says that the Giants have two choices to make here for the next head coach. One of them is obviously the name he just mentioned, Jim Harbaugh, and the other one is Doug Peterson. So I'm going to throw it out there. I'm going to go to Donald first because Donald's our Giants fan. He's our Giants expert. So, Donald, where do the Giants go from here when it comes to the next head coach?
GM. They're going to hire the GM first. That's what they're going to do.
Yes.
And then the GM is going to choose his guy. So the hot property that we're interviewing right now is Schoen, the
Bills assistant.
The Bills assistant general. He would be, a lot of teams are desperate for him. He's highly rated. So, he's certainly one guy, and he probably brings in maybe the Bills offensive coordinator. That's one possibility. I personally would love Brian Flores. I love Flores. I think he'd be a terrific coach for the Giants. But it's really the general manager that's going to make that decision. He's going to choose his guy, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay. Because you have to have the general manager and the head coach in sync. You just can't have them going in different directions. And so it's really important that the general manager is hired first, but quickly. That can't go on for weeks and weeks and weeks and all the head coaches are gone. It needs to be fairly efficient general manager search. Find the general manager and he chooses the head coach. But my choice for a head coach would be Flores.
And Flores is interviewing with the Bears Friday, so we'll see if the Giants even get a shot there, and then we'll certainly talk about him for sure. I mean, for you, Justin, do the Giants go for the GM first and then hire the coach? I mean, John mentions obviously two big names out there. One of them is a potential in Harbaugh, but he's in Michigan. And Doug Peterson's obviously the big name. He won a Super Bowl not too far from here, local guy in terms of coaching in the area. I mean, is that who the Giants make the move here, or is it maybe even what Donald said, go for an assistant like Buffalo's? I mean, give me your thoughts on some of those things.
Yeah, they are going to have to start with the GM, which is a little confusing as to why. I mean, I'm surprised that Flores is already interviewing with Chicago for the job. They don't have a GM themselves. They fired Ryan Pace. But, I mean, I guess that ownership will just say, we like Brian Flores and GM can work with him. But, yeah, the Giants need to start with the GM. They do need to move swiftly. And, yeah, this, who knows how long this will take, because it also depends on how far the team you're hiring from goes, because you can't officially hire them until they're eliminated. And if it is a guy like Brian Dable, which brings familiarity with John Shen, who is the Buffalo assistant GM. How long is it going to take? Buffalo's who knows how far they could go. They've been thought of as a potential Super Bowl team from the start of the season. So, really don't know.
Patrick may disagree with you on that.
We'll see.
And I don't know. I honestly don't know how far they'll go. But that's why some of these coaches, like, look at Eric Bieniemy. He's been a hot name for years.
A long time. Brad White's been talking about him for 3 years. I've known Brad 3 years. He's talking about him 3 years.
I would love Bieniemy. I would love Bieniemy.
Really? And they've been. Yeah. And the Chiefs have been to 3 straight AFC Championship games. The first year they lost to the Patriots on that offside play, and then they won the Super Bowl. Then they lost the Super Bowl last year. So 3 straight years the Chiefs have been in the AFC Championship game, and these coaching jobs are getting filled up quickly. Because teams don't want to have to wait. They want to get your coaching staff in order as fast as possible, because you want as good of assistants as possible.
God.
And so Eric Bieniemy strikes as another name that I'm certainly interested in.
Yeah.
And how about Jim Caldwell?
Yep. Yeah, that's another good one. Now listen.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't Bieniemy share the? Isn't he like co-offensive coordinator?
No, he's not.
I heard something this year that he hasn't even been calling the plays all the time.
Because that's Andy Reid's job.
So then, I'm just not as high on Bieniemy as I think Mahomes covers up some of the coaching.
I think so too, and I think that's the thing. I think that's what you have to be careful with Bieniemy. I threw his name out because he's been a hot coordinator. I don't necessarily think he particularly works unless he has an extremely talented quarterback.
And let me get in a few comments and a few shout-outs. First of all, Alice Hayes is watching us, who's from the Sports Authority group. I want to give Alice a huge shout-out. She is a big fan of us. So, Alice, thank you for your support over the past few weeks. And John's got a lot to say. He says here, please don't mention Brian Flores. He's another Belichick disciple. The guy was 9-8. Since when is he the next Vince Lombardi? He says, Bieniemy is a bad choice. You know what? He's 24-18 his last 42 games as coach. Don't forget the Dolphins had that horrific start a few years back. No, you know what? I think he's competent. They had a good defense. They were in these games.
Issues, though.
We'll get into him. I
agree with half that statement. Obviously, I don't agree.
Not a great quarterback either. I mean,
he's
not great. He's
not great. Somebody on Twitter was actually, I can't believe I'm saying this before I get to Patrick and Chris, but somebody was actually saying that Adam Gase was a better head coach for the Dolphins than Brian Flores was. The reason this was so the guy did a post and he compared like Flores and Gase against teams that were playoff teams and each year, and his point was that Gase had better defense, better offense against teams that were in the postseason. The point he was trying to get across was that Flores was really overrated and the Dolphins beat nobody, and that the record, they really weren't as good as the record. So that was his point.
To be fair to Gase, he did make the playoffs
once.
With the Dolphins. And guess what? Flores didn't make the playoffs at all.
Flores had one more win than Gaze in the 3 years he was there. So, but again, it's a tough call. It's a tough call. I mean, but
Flores has a winning record against Belichick. Now, anyone who has a winning record against Belichick is a good coach.
Well, I guess
pretty good coach.
Wasn't he the one coach that against Belichick was able to win the games? Remember with Mangini when he was Jets coach? He had the one win. I think it was in New England. Other than that, you could never beat New England. And then every other coach that went in, Belichick would beat their brains in. So, but John Gonzalez also chimes in. Jim Caldwell, he'd be okay with. Yeah, Caldwell. Listen, Caldwell did a good job with the Lions. Kind of got a raw deal there. I think we'd all be okay with that. For you, Patrick, I mean, you kind of touched upon it. What do the Giants do? I mean, I guess it's GM first, and then who do you think they go for coach?
I would say the GM first, and then obviously then the coach. But I think the bigger question is, how long are they going with Jones as quarterback? Is it a year to year? Is it
a big?
I mean, if it's year to year, look, it's an NFL job. It's the New York Football Giants. It's a great job, but they've had 3 head coaches in 6 years.
This would be 4, yeah.
4, and you're telling me that we're going year to year with Daniel Jones?
Well, Boomer Esiason's point was that the Giants sort of get, because they're a legacy franchise like the Bears, that they get time to be bought because people just know them automatically. So you're right, and he agreed with that.
But the coaches don't get the time.
No, but in terms of the quarterback, he said that the quarterback might get a little extra time, and that franchise might get a little bit more time in sorting things out because
haven't you seen enough from Daniel Jones?
Here's the situation with Daniel Jones. Every general manager and head coach will want their own quarterback. That's just
right. I agree with you, Donald.
So they are not going to just settle for Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, we moved on. I just don't. I think it's unfortunate that the Giants are in a draft situation where it's not a great quarterback draft, because otherwise I think there wouldn't even be a question about it. They'd be drafting a quarterback at 5 or 7.
Right. That was part of why I asked.
You know what I mean?
The quarterback class.
I think what they might do is they probably bring in a veteran who kind of maybe pushes Daniel Jones, maybe even replaces him midway through. And then next year, the year after, he'll be completely gone. Jones will not be the Giant quarterback for long. It's a fact, because he's not good. He's not a good quarterback. Right. He's mediocre to below average.
Let me ask you a follow-up, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I'm going to ask you, Don, because you're the Giants fan. You know the Giants better than certainly I do, because I got to be honest. And I defended the Giants a lot on the air here, but I kind of
nothing to defend. They're a disaster.
Let me ask you a question, because before I get to Chris on his thoughts, when it comes to quarterbacks, and I think we kind of touched upon him on Friday's show, would you want, let's say, a Matt Ryan type in there that could maybe compete for the job, give you some short-term moments? Is that what you're looking for, where you want to say, you know what? Because like you said, the quarterback at the draft level is very slim who you're going to get. Who else you can get, because the cap room situation is going to be slim. I mean, is a Matt Ryan type the kind of guy you'd look in there to maybe compete with Jones for the job, and if he's in there, could be credible?
I think that's probably what they're going to look at. I mean, maybe Jimmy G or something, trade for Jimmy G.
Well, he's in the playoffs right now, so he might stay for all we know.
They better if they go with Matt Ryan or Jimmy G, they're starting.
100%. Of course. Garoppolo is better than Daniel Jones.
That's the thing. How are you paying for Matt Ryan?
Right.
He's got all that. He's got all that money coming to him. Honestly,
I think you'd have to go lower level to do what Donald.
They're basically looking at Ryan Fitzpatrick next year.
Yeah, that's a perfect.
That's a fair analysis.
Andy Dalton,
he's not going to take up a ton of cap room. He's probably 1 year, $8 million, and that's about what the Giants can afford at this point.
But you really want somebody.
They're in cap hell right now.
Yeah, I know they are. Gettleman's absolutely
bad teams are hardly ever in cap hell. Look at the Jaguars. Look at the Jets. Look at all the cap room both those teams have.
Mm-hmm. I know. Gettleman's napalmed the franchise. So the fact that
I still can't get over the fact, Donald, the Giants wouldn't fire him. It was retired.
I know. I was actually just about to say that. The fact that he was allowed to retire is embarrassing.
Could you imagine like the Yankees or the Mets doing that here for New York? Hey, retire. The Giants of all teams with that franchise, that fan base, it's almost as if, I guess, the Giants tolerate this. I mean, even the Jets, listen, for Justin and Chris and anybody else who's a Jet fan, I could never imagine the Jets allowing a general manager who did this kind of job to be able to retire. I mean, does he have inside information on
the He held everybody. Sorry, what's to say, Justin? Sorry.
They're looking at Dave Gettleman's entire legacy as a whole. He was the VP of player personnel for the 2 Super Bowl championships, in which Jerry Reese was the general manager. But then again, Jerry Reese,
he hung on for like 4 more years.
And Dave Gettleman compounded it.
Yeah.
And Dave Gettleman just compounded it.
But Reese was fired mid-season, and he was the actual GM for the 2 Super Bowls.
Exactly.
So he was allowed to retire. It made no sense at all. But yes, you're right. That's how they looked. He's basically a member of the family. That's why he was allowed to retire. But for what he actually did as a general manager, he held people with contempt. He treated people badly. From what I'm hearing, that he treated scouts terribly. There's guys like Scott Simonson, the tight end, who was released. He went on Twitter and he absolutely eviscerated Gettleman as a human being, not just a general manager, but actual human being. But no, the thing about Gettleman is he held the fans, he held the media with complete contempt. Because remember how he mocked modern analytics? Computer people. I mean, it's embarrassing because this is the modern.
But that's why my point was the Giants let him get away with this. I mean,
they did.
Bizarre situation. Chris, before I have a John Gonzalez comment, but I want to get your thoughts first. I mean, so what do you think then after hearing the guys? Do you have a different thought? I mean, in terms of what the Giants do here for GM and coach, and then I got a John Gonzalez comment.
Well, I think it's going to come down to what direction they're going to go with the coach. Are they going to get a veteran coach, number one, or number two? Are they going to go with the offensive coordinator type, or are they going to go the defensive coordinator type like Flores? Because if you go offensive coordinator type, that you're going with the Bieniemy, Dabo, or even Peterson as well. Peterson's
Hackett
too, or Hack. Yeah, defense. You got Flores. Do you want that? Because think about it. The Giants. What was Coughlin? Was Coughlin a defensive guy or offensive guy?
Offensive guy.
Okay, so out of him,
Pat Shermer called his own plays. He's the best example.
Yeah,
it just did not work.
So maybe they want to go back to defense. Because these last couple of guys have been offensive guys and they've gone absolutely nowhere. So they might want to go for a guy like Flores.
And then Ben McAdoo, he called his own plays. Pat Shermer called his own plays. None of those worked. So
it's tricky not to bring up past coaches because my theory is if you fall in love with a guy and he's your coach, he's going to be your coach. Just go for him, whether he's offense or defense. I think you interview as many as you can.
Yeah, that's
and whoever knocks you off your feet.
and that, I think that's what it's going to come down to. Like, I think if they get Flores, you're talking about a whole different mentality for that team. You're going back to the older Giant ways, right? In the 80s and 90s, defense and all that. So they might go in that direction. So it'll be interesting which way they go because we really have no idea because first they have to get the GM in. I think when you see the GM come in and then you'll see the names being talked to and who they're interviewing, then you'll have an idea of what direction they're heading in, I think.
And I got a few comments in here from John Gonzalez. Also want to give a shout out to Ron Laird. Ron is watching us. And of course, Ron is a huge Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. So obviously for Ron, sort of rooting for the Bucs, but then Chris is an Eagles fan. So obviously good luck to both teams. But John chimes in here and says the Giants cannot continue to hire second-tier head coaches. He emphasized it. He mentions McAdoo, Shermer, Judge. He says that they have to show the fan base that they mean business when it comes to winning. He says they must hire a head coach that has previous experience and has been a proven winner. He talks also about the fact that Coughlin was a wide receivers coach under Parcells, then went to Boston College and had some success. And then with Jacksonville, obviously, those early years, the couple of AFC championship games. So John is all about a coach in here with experience. He doesn't want to be enemy. He just want. Go ahead, Chris. Jump.
I was going to say that kind of leans towards Doug Peterson. But I'll be honest, I don't see Doug Peterson going to the Giants after coaching the Eagles.
You sure about that, though?
I don't know. Because
You don't think he'd want to get back at the Eagles?
I don't know. I don't think he left that really bad there. I don't think it was like burning bridges.
You don't think that's tempting, though, for anybody here? I mean,
it might be, but it's not the greatest situation when you think about it. You know,
does Peterson have really a relationship with any of the guys that we're interviewing, though? Because that's really what it comes down to.
Right.
Who has the kind of relationship with the people that we'll be interviewing? So I'm not sure if Peterson's hot
with
on
John's comment. I kind of disagree a little bit. I mean,
Why?
obviously you want a proven winner, but Vince Lombardi is not walking through that door in the job. I mean, you're unemployed for a reason.
Well,
whether it's justified or unjustified.
Unless, and I'm going to take Harbaugh to the side because that's a
college coach is a little different.
But I have one exception to that because I'm going to go off what Jay Glazer said during Sunday's NFL games and pre-games on Fox. Hypothetically, and I don't know if this is going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen, but I'll throw it out there because going off John's point, if Seattle parted ways with Pete Carroll, is that the guy you do whatever you could? That's the guy that fits what John's looking for. Proven winner. Mm-hmm. He's a champion. He's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame as a college coach and an NFL coach. I mean, this guy's a surefire Hall of Famer. Is that the guy you say, you know what? Forget Flores. Forget Peterson even. Forget Cordwell even. Forget a Bill O'Brien type. Whoever else is out there. Is that the guy that screams, you know what? I just bet the farm and do whatever I can to get him in here if they part ways. I mean, what does anybody think about that?
I'll take that one a step further.
Okay, go ahead.
See if you could get Sean Payton out of New Orleans.
Yes, that's the
former Giants offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Was there during the Super Bowl run in the loss to Baltimore.
Did a good job this year. Absolutely did a good job.
Won 9 games with no quarterback.
0 quarterbacks.
Right.
Well, he's going to be in the same situation if he goes to the Giants then.
Maybe he'll bring,
no, that's a good.
Maybe he'll bring Ian Book with him. You never know.
Oh boy, here we go. Ian Book slander.
It would cost a fortune to get him out of New Orleans.
And
it would cost multiple draft picks.
And I don't know what his contract status is, but I don't know if he'd go if the Giants go stopgap quarterback. Bring in Jameis Winston. Winston wasn't all that terrible.
I think Winston's an unrestricted free agent.
Or were they 4-2 when they got hurt? So they were doing okay. They probably would have had
he was playing well. And he was starting to cut down on his turnovers in New Orleans.
Though, would they get rid of him? I don't think they would.
The Saints?
I'm talking about Payton, not Winston. Like, would the Saints get rid of Payton?
No, they'd never get rid of him. It would cost multiple draft picks.
You'd have to trade him. That's
it would be a mega deal. I don't know.
To Tom's point, Carroll might be. They might just part ways. And
I don't know that they will. It depends on what they do with Russell Wilson.
I think he's definitely gone. That's my opinion.
Carroll?
No, Wilson.
Oh, Wilson.
So maybe if
I don't know about that.
I gotta get a Ron Laird has chimed in, and huge shout outs to Ron Laird. Ron brings up Brian Flores. He couldn't understand with him in Miami. Would that be a guy anybody be happy with Brian Flores as the Giants coach if he was available? Would anybody be okay with him?
I have reservations actually.
Talk to me.
There's something internal. You don't just fire him after 3 seasons like that. They weren't terrible. They were competitive. Say what you want about who they played. Winning 7 in a row in the NFL is a very tough feat.
Absolutely. And the first team to come back to go 1-7 and finish a winning season.
Yeah, they went from 1-7 to 9-8. That says something. But I don't know what internal issues there were.
Okay.
Minkah Fitzpatrick on his way to the Steelers trashed Brian Flores because of the way he was used. So I don't know. This honestly could be an Eric Mangini 2.0.
Okay. Go ahead,
I would focus more on the Dolphins not having a great front office situation. I think that's more it rather than anything to do with Flores. Because if you look at the reaction to Flores being fired, everyone's like, "What the heck are the Dolphins doing? Are they out of their minds?"
I agree.
So there's a reason for that. So I think it focuses more on the
step
Dolphins.
further, they were split on who to draft at quarterback. We all know Joe Burrow was the number 1 pick. We all know he was going to go to the Bengals number 1. it was apparent Brian Flores wanted Justin Herbert,
Who wouldn't?
Stephen Ross, and Chris Greer, the GM, Chris Greer, wanted Tua Tagovailoa. The GM won.
There you go. That's it.
So the owner has continued to side with the GM, who has been with the organization since I think 2000, and in some capacity, and the GM the last 6-7 years, what have they won? They've won nothing.
But I think that answers your question in a roundabout way. I think that the reason they get rid of Flores is he hasn't elevated. Say what you want about Tua, he hasn't elevated that guy, and he hasn't elevated their play. And
he's elevated the play of the team.
Of the team, but there's a ceiling there.
Tua,
if he's not a Tua guy, if Brian Flores is all about the team and rah and my way, building a culture, that's great. But if he doesn't believe in his quarterback, if he wanted Herbert,
with Tua, the whole thing with, remember Deshaun Watson, there was supposedly a trade okayed to go to Miami, and you got to remember he only okayed that trade because he wanted to play for Flores.
Yes.
So now, wherever Flores goes, maybe Watson goes. That's a whole other thing to get.
Flores arguably got enough out of Tua in order to win games. I don't even know how he managed to do it because Tua is
limited.
Dip and duck quarterback is what he is right now. I mean,
no arm strength.
I'm just saying that if your head coach isn't all in on the starting quarterback, the first round pick,
I think he was. I think he was when he probably wasn't. He probably wasn't in on the pick, but once he got him, I think he was like, "All right, this is my guy."
I don't know about that because he tried hard to keep Ryan Fitzpatrick out there last year, as much as he could, and then they would flip flop quarterbacks in game last year. And
that was a tough situation because if I recall correctly, they were in a playoff race and you're kind of figuring out what to do. You have this quarterback, you drafted him, but the team
they weren't sure Tua could win them games. So he was like, "Yep, I want to win games. I need Fitzpatrick out there." So it was clear from the start he was not all in on Tua. And
John Gonzalez, I have to say, he's in full agreement with you, Justin. He says, now we're on the same page with your comments on Flores. So he's happy about that. He also adds that Flores didn't get along with the GM, Chris Greer, or the owner, Stephen Ross. So he thinks that was part of that. And he's just not sold on Flores. So I think at the end of the day, look, I do think that what Jay Glazer said Sunday was absolutely correct. I do think that Flores, somebody will hire him, whether it's Jacksonville.
He's going to get one of the. There are, I think, six jobs open now with the Giants.
Yep.
Firing today.
You got Minnesota's out there, Denver's out there, and
Minnesota. Watch for that combination: Brian Flores and Deshaun Watson to Denver.
I'll tell you what, Chris has been talking about Denver here for quite a while.
Can have him.
I'm surprised they fired Denver's.
Supremely talented, but
Denver's a quarterback
face of your franchise with all those legal issues.
That's the thing. We don't know. We don't know anything about those things. We don't know what the league is going to do to him. Are they going to suspend him? We're assuming they're going to suspend him at least 4 games, 8 games, right? Maybe they don't. I don't know. It's such a weird because the league has said nothing for the past year, and neither has him.
And it puts the Texans in a bad spot.
Right, I know. I mean, they're still going to get. Listen, they're still going to get 2 or 3 picks, first round.
They will, but I mean, look at all that money they paid him this year not to play. I mean, his cap hit I think was like $40 million.
And I have a list here from John, which was good on and we'll move on, but he's got a good list on the Belichick coaches. He said the only one that has worked out of them is Mike Vrabel. He said McDaniels was a disaster in Denver. Judge was horrible. Mangini, Romeo Crennel. I mean, Flores. I think Flores has done okay, John. I mean, the guy.
O'Brien was a winner in Houston, right?
I think what was he? It's 52 and 48 or something like that.
Yeah, he was above 500.
The problem with O'Brien was once he was given control of the entire franchise and he was made the GM, he didn't know how to pick personnel.
But he's still overall his tenure was they were winning.
He didn't know how to pick personnel.
Right. But I mean, at the end, he was still a winner. I mean,
even Flores, I can't get on the guy. The first time the Dolphins have back-to-back winning seasons since 02-03. I mean, he had the team, took it from 1. I know the schedule was weak, but you still went from 1-7 to 9. That team didn't quit. They could have listened.
No.
They could have walked out on him. Then I would have said, you definitely got to get rid of him. But I thought after beating New England, I didn't even think Flores was on the hot seat. I got to be honest.
No.
I mean, these other coaches, we talked about Denver. We talked about Minnesota. We talked about even Judge. You know,
Those were obvious.
yeah. I mean, I didn't see that one coming, but obviously, look.
Well, I was going to ask you guys, right?
But
Which firing surprised you the most, or which guy losing their job surprised you the most on Black Monday?
Flores.
Not even a question.
All right, who was second? All right, let's
second. Yeah.
Second.
Maybe
Zimmer.
Zimmerman.
Zimmer,
I
Minnesota.
gotta say Zimmer. Honestly.
Zimmer had a winning record. I mean,
Yeah.
But I think it just ran dry. It was 8 years. I think things just ran dry there.
you know what it reminded me
Nagy
of?
was all that
You know-
obvious. Jacksonville had already gotten rid of Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
So that was
Urban Meyer.
an easy situation. Who am I missing? Who am I missing here?
Vic Fangio, Denver.
Fangio. I'm surprised at
No.
Fangio.
No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't.
That
Really? 'Cause
was
their
that
defense
was
did
rumored for a
not quit
while.
on him, and he's a defensive coach. He was not given a quarterback.
Right. Listen, he won 7-8 games with Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock.
Yeah, but they
him
started 3-0 and they were 5-3 and they finished
Yeah.
7-10. So I mean, in one sense, that's a franchise that I couldn't even believe it. And I think was it Donald that somebody shared a tweet with all the teams that had most recently made the playoffs. And Denver, it's been a while now. I think it's 6 straight seasons without a playoff.
I was the one who shared that.
Right,
That 2015, it was Peyton Manning's last year. They won the Super Bowl over Carolina. That was the last time they
were
won.
9-7, right? The next year with Kubiak when he left, right? Something like that. They were 9-7.
I think so. I think because I think Osweiler was the quarterback that year.
The quarterback situation is such a
Well,
mess.
I
It's
have
been
one
for years.
coaching situation that I do have to put out there as an asterisk because I know some of these things I'm in agreement. You know, we talked about Zimmer, maybe 50-50, but I have to throw it out there kind of going into eventually Sunday's game, the last game of the regular season. What do you guys all think happens with the Raiders and their coach?
This one's tough because I think Rich Bisaccia deserves the job.
He does.
I believe he deserves the job. I also believe Mark Davis, the owner, wants to make a major splash. I think he's the type of owner who wants Jim Harbaugh. I truly do.
But but not everybody's going to get Jim Harbaugh. We've talked about the Giants, right? We know that they're going to try to do something, right? Now you've got the Raiders, and the Raiders are in the more precarious spot because
Miami might want to do something big too.
And Miami, and we know Ross is
the
a
owner
big
is a
owner.
Michigan guy.
And he already said he doesn't want him. He wants him to stay at Michigan, but I'll take that.
I think the Jim Harbaugh sweepstakes is the Raiders or the Bears, or he stays at Michigan.
Well, he's a former Bear. Harbaugh is a former Bear. That's an interesting.
That's the only connection. But I'd be disappointed because I honestly also could, I'm not making any prediction right now. I could see the Raiders playing past this weekend. I really do.
Well, the Bengals haven't won a playoff game since 1990, so if there's some of us here that
When
don't
did
even
the Raiders won a
Last time they won a playoff game, the Oilers were still in the league.
I was going to say there's
The
some
Raiders
of us
haven't won a
here
playoff
that
game
don't even
either
know what
lately.
the Bengals are like winning a playoff game. So who knows, really?
It's incredible that the Raiders made the
Joe
playoffs.
Burrow
Incredible
won the
considering what they went through as an organization over the year.
They won their last 4 games too. They won.
And think about it. And think about it. All that
win
stuff.
But you could argue Rich Bisaccia Coach of the Year.
And think about how does it make Gruden look?
Ron Laird actually just said that. He said the real surprise of all of this was what happened with Gruden and him, that whole thing. That's what Ron Laird chimes in with. I mean, you could take that for what you want. Anybody have a thought?
Gruden looked
That
like
was
garbage in this one because they looked dead when he was there, and then after he left, they look, all right, this is a decent team. They
finished, I think 6-5 or 7-5 under Bisaccia, which is not bad. I mean, listen, they played a lot of tough games. I mean, that was a team that lost some game, had a murky stretch in there, and the fact that they were able to, and they put the Derek Carr haters, they shut him up for a little while. I mean, Derek Carr looked good on Sunday
for a couple of days.
Credit to Carr.
Let's see what happens in a playoff game. That's the thing. We're talking about the Bengals. The Raiders haven't done much either. So, and now
I might trust the Raiders more than the Bengals though in the playoff game.
I don't know.
I'll tell you who I'd fire. I'll tell you who I'd fire.
All right, Donald, jump in. Who would you fire, Donald Stewart?
The Chargers. coach.
Yes.
Try it out.
Yeah.
How do you manage to do that? Oh my God. How do you manage to not make the playoffs
Snatching
with Justin
defeat from the
Herbert
jaws of
playing
victory.
like Zeus, like
You know-
the Greek god of quarterbacks? How did you not make the playoffs with that team?
Yeah, it's first year. You know what? I'm going to just play devil's advocate, and I'm going to defend Brandon Staley a little bit here.
Justin Gianelli, tell us why.
Oh, here we go.
All right. So if you looked at the formation, they were not lined up. I'm going to blame this on their defense. You got to make that stop, because if you stop them there, Raiders are going to say, "All right, you know what? We will run it out. We'll take the tie." But Jacobs goes and gets 10 yards, and next thing you know, it's makeable field goal range, as opposed to where it was before, and I think that's when they really changed their strategy.
But Derek Carr said when he was asked after the game.
I agree. And then they were going to, because they were not within makeable field goal range. And then they called the timeout because, and also if you look at the bottom of the television screen, there's a Raider receiver sitting there with no Charger defensive back. So Derek Carr could have looked and be like, you know what? Let me go throw a game-winning touchdown pass as well.
But I don't think they were going to do that. I think they were going to
He
kneel
was
and
also asked before the game, if you're in that spot, what do you do? And his situation was, well, if it gets me into the playoffs, yeah, I'm going to sit on the clock. They would have sat on the clock. They would have sat on it.
And remember, at the end of the game, Austin Eckler, I think, had a conversation with a guy, with a Raider, and they kind of said to him that they were just going to kneel. There was only 4 seconds left in the shot in the play clock. And that's when he called the timeout. But
the
Raiders weren't going to do anything.
Also, too, I'm still going to put it on the defense because, like I said, if they make that stop there, they're not.
Isn't Staley a defensive coach?
Yeah. Well, their run defense has had issues.
All right. Could you?
I mean,
you can't defend Staley when at their own 20.
Jump in. Go ahead, Donald.
Sorry, but you can't defend Staley when he went on 4th down at their own 20.
Well, that was it. I'm not defending him on that. 4th and 1 on your own 18. No defense there.
But hey, let's go. Let's think about this for a second too. The Chargers. When have they ever fulfilled any kind of promise that this team has ever had? Ever?
Yeah, that goes back a long.
It goes to Rivers. It goes to Dan Fouts. I mean, Justin Herbert's got a great arm, but
except the one time they sort of did when was 94 was the only time they did, but they didn't because they went and unexpectedly beat Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh went for it 4 times inside 4th down and had the same play, and all the Steelers had to do was get it in the end zone. Again, that was the Steelers when they had maybe their best run in the 90s, their best team.
Other than that year, they've always come up short.
And again, that brings back to my point from Friday as to why I picked the Raiders to win this game. When have you ever trusted the Chargers in a big spot? The Chargers always Charger.
It's another team.
You could change the uniform, change the players, change the coach, It's the same old Chargers. Story.
And John Gonzalez chimes in here, and he says, on the Raider situation, he feels that Bisaccia has done enough. He deserves to come back. And Justin really likes what you're saying tonight, Justin. I mean, definitely. John says that he thinks that you're right on everything with Harbaugh, and he says also the Chargers belong in San Diego. Yeah, I mean, I'm still trying to get over that, calling them the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, they don't have fans there either. That's the sad. They're like nomads. No matter where they go, they're not finding fans. But here's another coach that I thought, not that I thought he was going to get fired, but I think he's got one more year now. Is got to be Frank Reich with the Colts.
Well, it's funny you said that because I'm listening.
If he has another bad year next year, if he doesn't make the playoffs next year, why would you keep him?
But, I was listening to the radio overnight, and his name did come up as somebody that now all of a sudden is on the hot seat because of obviously how they ended the season. And just, I think one of the things that why he was on the hot seat, I think Boomer said there was something how they ended the season in terms of how he came across in the press conference was like all of a sudden now that, does the owner think about it, or does the owner maybe say, you know what, next year, now I'm watching this guy because of the circumstances and the way the team ended the season. So, yeah, I could see Frank Reich, and shout out to Steve Saperstein also. He's watching. Obviously, he's a Jets fan. So, Steve, you missed some of the Giants discussion, but hope you're well, buddy. Happy New Year. But, the Frank Reich's one, I got to say, losing the way they did in Jacksonville with everything on the line. I asked everybody here on the show on Friday, did anybody want to take the Jaguars?
Yeah,
I should have. I think
could not.
That's my point.
With the point, why not?
I think I might have been the only one to take Jacksonville to cover.
I think you took them to cover,
it.
but I looked at it. It screamed to me a game. 15-plus point favorites on the road. The way the Colts lost the week before against the Raiders, you almost felt as if maybe they were deflated a little bit. Remember, the week prior to the Raiders game had a huge win on Christmas against the Cardinals. Everybody sang the Colts' praises. A few weeks prior to that, they played Patrick's Patriots and dominated them. And then all of a sudden, they had the whole controversy with Wentz. Okay, fine. They lose the way they did at home to the Raiders. It almost felt like maybe they were deflated a bit. And then they play the way they did in Jacksonville. If you have one win to get into the postseason against Jacksonville, which was the worst team in the league, and you lose the way you did, I mean, yeah, you know what? I'm a Chris. I think Reich is the guy that's vulnerable. He's definitely vulnerable to me.
If they don't make the playoffs next year, there's no way he's going to come back. There's no way, right? I mean, this was his second year, right?
Yeah.
Frank Reich?
Did they make the playoffs last year?
Frank Reich, this is like his fourth year.
Oh, so he's definitely gone next year.
Get rid of him. In that
Absolutely.
case. I know what you're saying. He's on the hot
Jim
seat.
is a pretty loyal owner, so he might have a longer leash than we expect.
You're right. And
but
if this is his fourth year, then you're right. He already has the long leash. Next year, I think it's playoffs or
that whole season was a roller coaster.
Problem is, look who his quarterback is. That's
right. I know.
Right. How many years can you waste that running back talent and the lack of competition in that division?
And here's the thing: who brought that quarterback? Who gave the okay to bring in Wentz? Frank Reich.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
Blood's on his hands for this one.
On him.
It was a roller coaster of a season for the Colts because at the start of the year
they were 1-4. They went 8-2 and lost the last two games.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, Reich probably does get another shot. 37-28 in the regular season, thanks to the crack staff. I mean, that doesn't scream like you're going to get fired. But I'm with Chris though. You lose the way you did in Jacksonville. I'm sorry that you laid an egg. You laid a big egg.
Yeah.
Has to bounce back next year.
It's an appalling result. It's unacceptable. I mean, right up to Jacksonville was like, he's actually done a pretty good job. He's galvanized the Colts. They've got a decent defense. Yeah. They've got an unbelievable running back core with Taylor and Hines. They're sensational. And Wentz has been average enough to win. And you're thinking, this is a team that can make the playoffs. And
we thought they were going to be a team that could go deep.
We were saying this is a team that you don't want to play in the playoffs.
No,
we were saying that last week. I think 2 weeks ago.
Because of Jonathan Taylor.
2 weeks ago.
Right, because of Taylor. And you know what? That's a good.
But you saw what happened when the Jacksonville front just started to stuff Jonathan Taylor at the line of scrimmage. He only had 15 carries for 77 yards on Sunday, and Carson Wentz over the last month or so has shown to be incapable of making plays, and. And they were winning with smoke and mirrors. They were winning when he was throwing for 60 yards, 50 yards.
That's true.
Because Jonathan Taylor would run for 150. Well, that's not going to happen when teams start to expect it and they start to stack the box. And look, Jacksonville all year was getting gashed on the ground. All year long.
Right. It's
bizarre.
I mean, the Jets just gashed him on the ground a couple weeks ago.
Right. And John Gonzalez chimes in here on the whole Carson Wentz situation. He says, now the Eagles have the last laugh because they are the ones who made the playoffs, and they got the number one pick for Carson Wentz. You want to talk about that, Chris? You're our Eagles fan. You want to?
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? He needed to play, 70% of the plays, and he got that like 4 or 5 weeks ago, and that was a big thing on Eagles Twitter and stuff. So it was.
I can take it a step further. Joe Judge, in his press conference at the end of last year, ripped the Eagles, saying that them playing the backups disgrace to football or whatever.
Well, you know what, Mr.
And then
Judge
a year
isn't
later,
talking
he's
about
out of
that.
a job and the Eagles are in the playoffs.
Yeah,
so.
Mr. Judge isn't talking, but we are talking all things related here to the world of NFL football and certainly the huge news that shook up here the New York sports world, and that Joe Judge is no longer the head coach of those New York football Giants. And we're talking all things related here with the Sportswire Radio gang that includes Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter Show, Donald Stewart, also of the Pinstripe Chronicles, Patrick Trotty and Chris Pizzay of the Talking Rivals Show, and I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. And if you like what you hear from us, and most especially if you like the Baseball Banter, you like the Pinstripe Chronicles, the Talking Rivals, and the Liftoff Jet Show, check us out anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year on sportnarium.com/player. If you like what you hear from us on Facebook, also please give us a follow at Sportswire Radio, as we'll always be up here on Facebook. We're up here Friday nights, 9:30 p.m. We'll be picking our games on Friday because we'll have the Brute Force Brad Weiss. We'll have Billy McInerney. Billy, huge shout out to him. He's a little under the weather. So obviously I want to make sure that we pick our games on Friday to give those guys a shot. But we'll definitely talk more things related here to the NFL and a few other thoughts. And I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryson. Speaking of teams that I know one of our analysts really had a lot of thoughts on, a lot of opinions on. I guess you could say he was a fan of theirs, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers and the brute force Brad Weiss, of course, I'm talking about. And boy, those Pittsburgh Steelers, I could never think of a team that had to sweat like the Pittsburgh Steelers did in order to make the playoffs. And they found a way. They definitely grinded it out, to say the least. As my father would say, you kind of grin and bared into the postseason, yet the Steelers have done it. It'll certainly be an interesting matchup between the Steelers and Chiefs, but we won't get into our picks. We'll save that for Friday's show when we get the gang in here. But, I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers, I mean, what did you guys all think of them making the postseason, especially the way they did?
It wasn't pretty, but I think Donald mentioned it before. I mean, Mike Tomlin, another great coaching job, getting as much as he did out of Big Ben. That defense with Watt, we'll get into it on Friday, but you know they're in the playoffs. I mean, they have a puncher's chance. They have a good coach. They have a proven quarterback, and it's his last stand. So this is his last go around in the playoffs. But it was that tie ends up. That tie earlier in the year we were talking about.
Weeks back. I remember going on the air saying the tie is going to be the benefit of the doubt. And you know what? That tie is the reason they're in the postseason. Because if they lost, it would be the Chargers that would have made the postseason. Right. So,
the cardiac Steelers all year. Yeah. Every game was insane. Every game was absolutely nuts with the Steelers. Like, I couldn't even get one because I got a lot of
Ravens guys. Because remember when John Harbaugh went for 2 and the Steelers won that game, and remember all he had to do was kick the point. It goes to overtime. I mean, so he's got to also, Mike Tomlin and the rest of the Steelers team, give a huge thank you to John Harbaugh also, because
but every week was like that. Remember that time where Boswell got hurt and then they couldn't kick any field goals, so they were all going for 2 every single time. Remember that?
Yeah,
that was an insane game. Every game was nuts with the Steelers. I watched every Steeler game.
I'm sorry to hear that, Don, because they were tough to watch this year.
Well, I had a blast. Buffalo to start the year. I had a blast because it was fun. Because watching the Giants was like watching
root canal. It was like when I had root canal 2 years ago. That's what it was like.
Pulling my fingernails out, But I got a lot of family and friends in Pittsburgh, and so
okay.
I have got a soft spot for them. So I wanted them to do well. So I'm really happy for them, and it was just credit to Tomlin. And there's
Mike Tomlin, 15 years in the league, 15 seasons of 500 or better. Ben Roethlisberger, 18 years in the league, 18 years without a losing season. I mean, that's impressive. I mean, I have to say, that's incredible. I mean, congratulations to them.
And they can move the ball on offense. They can move the ball on offense. Johnson, I like Johnson as a wide receiver.
Yeah, terrific.
They did okay. They
Harris is really good. And then Ben picked it up as the year went on. I thought Ben was toast at the start of the year. He kind of picked it up.
I think you were with us when Pittsburgh was 1-3. I think we did a Sunday night show. I think it was you, Sharman. I think Patrick and Chris were on it, and we all thought that Pittsburgh was done. It was the end of the line for Ben Roethlisberger. I remember even asking the question: I
still think it is. I mean,
Yeah.
It probably is, but
Time is
they're playing. They're still playing.
They're in it.
So, I mean, they made the.
And that just goes to show you how good of a coaching job it was.
He did enough, though, Ben.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. I mean, the big tie, obviously, that comes into it. Big Ten did not play.
What an ugly game that was! What an ugly game to watch that was. It was like rainy and 50 degrees, and it was like 20-mile-an-hour winds. It was just
it was just awful.
Terrible rubbish. I mean, terrible football to watch.
I mean, I don't think they have a chance against Kansas City. I'll be honest, but you know what? You never know. With the NFL, especially this year, we've seen it every week. Every week. One of those games where you're like, what the hell just happened, right? When we seen it, we're just talking about it. Jacksonville beating Indianapolis, the Seahawks beating Arizona after we thought Arizona kind of.
How about San Francisco coming down 17-0 and beating the Rams? I mean, what a bloody win that was. I mean, if you are not a Jimmy G fan, I mean, you might want to be one after the way he guided that team. And I was watching that game, and I was watching over the Jets game and seeing just his courage and his heart leading that team into a win that they needed to win, because New Orleans had won. They had already won, and you're just watching that game. And it was
banged up thumb too, right?
Yep. You had that weird, white, cast on the top of his thumb. And you're saying to yourself, how is he throwing the ball? And
it's crazy. And you got to give him credit. And on the flip side, what the hell is going on with the Rams? What happened to this team?
I think it's their defense. Their defense is really falling apart.
And
they gave up some big plays to San Francisco. I mean, they gave up at least 4 or 5 different big plays in the second half.
Jordan's defense been up 17 and lost the game.
Yeah, first time Sean McVay has lost a game when leading at halftime.
There you go.
You mentioned that in our chat on Sunday.
What's going on?
And Sean McVay also announced that starting safety Jordan Fuller is out for the year with an ankle. Right. So that's another hit to their defense, and that's going to be a toss-up game. I mean, San Francisco. I mean, credit to them for getting the job done, and and they're dangerous with
Deebo Samuel is a great.
Oh, I love that.
They're dangerous because Deebo Samuel, whether he's a pass catcher or he's running those jet sweeps or reverses, or Eli Mitchell. I mean, they are. They have a lot of talent on offense, and their defense is always solid. San Francisco is.
Oh, that's going to be. I can't wait for Friday, because the 49ers Cowboys. That might be the game that I'm most excited about, because as a kid,
I have no issue saying this now. Cowboys. Best game of the weekend. I have no issue saying that. Now. Best game of the weekend. 49ers Cowboys.
As a kid growing up, it was 3 straight years: 92, 93, 94 NFC Championship game, 49ers Cowboys. And I remember as a kid, you were either supposed to be a 49ers fan or a Cowboys fan growing up. Yeah. So I'm really pumped up to talk about that on Friday, and I won't spoil it.
Here's the point we didn't talk about with the Rams. Now, we were talking about Staley was a defensive coordinator, right? He was a DC for the Rams last year, right?
Yes.
So maybe that has something to do with the Rams kind of missing something on defense, because the players are there. You know what I mean?
But you hired a veteran defensive coordinator with Raheem Morris, also a former head coach.
Yep.
But so it's not like you have an inexperienced play caller on the defensive side of things.
But to that point, though, now you're changing the defense. You're changing the system a little bit, right? I mean, you're not using what Staley did, so maybe that has something to do.
But also you would expect by week 18 that they'd be used to the system by now, and they were a good unit, but they were a good unit early on in the season. Yeah. As the season has worn on, they've gotten worse.
A lot of this has to do with Stafford as well. He's been inconsistent.
Yeah,
I mean, in the first half of the year, I was like, "Oh my God, Stafford looks fantastic." Second half of the year, he's been very, very.
But that was going to lead into my next point. They really
missed Robert Woods. They missed Robert Woods because he was a really good outside option. Other than beside Cooper Kupp, I've always been a big fan of Robert Woods. So losing him is kind of a miss.
I was going to say about Matthew Stafford, and Chris knows how I feel about Matthew Stafford. When are the excuses going to stop, and it's just going to be on him to elevate whatever team he's on? I get Detroit. I get
this year,
but this is.
Well, it better stop, because Monday night, are you ready?
Now.
It's good.
Monday night. This is. I hate to say it's his career game, But
Well, no, listen, I mean, this is as good as opportunity he's got. And the Cardinals, again, they've had their own struggles. They finished the season 4-6, and John Gonzalez chimes in here and that he's got a few surprises that he's not going to share, but he's happy about the fact that the Brufus, Brad Weiss, should admit that he's a Lions fan. And he said his heart was broken for not going against him. Well, he's taunting Brad because Brad's not here. He's probably on a basketball court on Long Island somewhere and probably without a voice right now. And John also chimes in here. He likes Staley going back to the Chargers, but he was shocked with his moves on Sunday night. He's still shaking his head. Yeah, if I'm a Chargers fan right now, I'd be shaking my head as well because you were going to be in the postseason. You're not in the postseason. But I was listening to going back real quick on the Chargers thing because I was listening to the NFL Network post game, and I was listening to Maurice Jones-Drew, and Chris Rose had actually asked him this question, and I'll be curious to get Brad's perspective because Brad is a player and a coach, most recently now a coach. And Maurice Jones-Drew said he was fine with the call because he felt that Staley had talked about that with his players in the locker room and leading up into practices the week going into the game Sunday, and he felt that his players probably knew that he was going to come up with that call if they were in that situation. Does anybody buy that in what Staley's call? Did anybody buy that as a response that, you know what, that was the right call, or anybody still says, you know what, just a boneheaded call? Anybody buy that? No. The timeout, correct. The timeout. Yep. He felt that in that situation, he felt that Jones-Drew had said that his players, Staley, when they were practicing during the week, knew that there could be a situation that this could go to overtime or any scenario like that. And he felt that they were prepared. And as a player, they want to still win the game. And he felt that the locker room there, everybody was going to be fine with that move because it was something that they probably practiced. And that was kind of the MO of Staley as coach.
But maybe I can refute that in 1 second. Did you guys see the video where Justin Herbert said to the player right beside him going, "Oh, I've never wanted to tie so much in my life." You actually heard him say those words.
That's why I threw it out there because that's what I wanted to hear.
And when the clock ran to 4 seconds, and Collinsworth is like, "Okay, so they're just going to let the clock run," and then they called the timeout, and Collinsworth was like, What's going on?"
It was bizarre. I got to be honest. I was standing up and watching the game, and my brother was watching, and we both looked like, what is he doing? I was like, what is he doing?
Exactly.
And he was saying during the game, you're going to get a tie. Both teams are going to be in the postseason. It just was boneheaded. It was one of those boneheaded plays. So everybody's agreement that there was no reason to call the timeout then.
Right. But I think going back to what he was originally talking about with Staley, I think they were talking about if they were in the situation of the Raiders, where they were like, okay, should we go and run another play and set up for a field goal and all that? I don't think it was meant that because, if they had a chance to call a timeout on defense. And listen, I think when you get a chance to eliminate a divisional opponent to get into the playoffs, you do it.
I don't care. I want the tie. I want to make the postseason. I'll worry about division rivals later on. I
want to knock these guys out. I don't want to see them again.
All right.
Because you might have to play them again, and you know what? They got 2 games on you, and I know you got 2 games on them too. But you know what I mean? Listen, if I'm the Jets, right? Let me see if I could tie us and the Patriots get in. But if we kick a field goal here, I can knock these guys out. Yeah, I'm going to knock these guys out, and I'm sure Bill Belichick is thinking the same exact thing. He don't want the Jets in the playoffs, because hey, those guys beat us once. I don't want them to ever do that again. Yeah.
That's a bad example because Bill will do anything to stick it to the Jets.
Yeah,
right. Well, that's too right. Okay, so let's say it's the Dolphins then, or the Bills. The Bills. That's another good example.
John Gonzalez has got a good question actually for us here, this is a good one. I actually want to read this up because it's actually a really good scenario here. So, John says, "What was more shocking?" He says, Staley's decision to call timeout at the end of the game, or the Colts not showing up against the Jaguars. What anybody think about that?
The Colts not showing up.
Yeah, that was.
I mean, how in a winning in game do you just not show up like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Against the worst team in the league. On top of that, additional team, but they did. I think they lost 7 straight, right? At Jacksonville, is that or 6?
Was it somebody on a discussion that had brought
gave you the number of days on Friday?
It was you, Justin Gianelli.
Yeah.
You brought it up.
Yeah, they lost like 6 or 7 straight to them. I mean,
yep,
it's crazy, but that's another reason. Man, that's another reason to be so up for that game to make the playoffs, to break this dumb streak that we got against this team. Like, how do you not? That's inexcusable. The timeout, I don't know. Maybe they thought they weren't prepared for the play, like Justin said. Like they weren't really lined up for the play, so maybe they were worried that
I would say not showing up.
Yeah,
it's got to be because that's sustained over a couple hours. The timeout is just a quick
one play,
right?
But in one sense, I see where John's coming from because we were watching the game. We were all talking about it in our group thread, and it seemed like the Raiders had that game on cruise control. It was 29-14, and next thing you know, Chargers score. They get the ball back, and they had that drive, which felt like it was 19 plays, but it felt like 900 plays.
Oh, my God, yeah.
I mean, how many they converted more fourth downs than probably the Giants have converted in the entire season. They had like 5 fourth downs or 6 fourth downs and that drive. And in one sense, you
had a lot more of length, too.
What's that?
A lot of them were of length too. They weren't like all just like 4th and 1s.
Yeah, no.
Like
it was
a 4th and 12, a 4th and 10. I think was in there. They weren't like like you said, they weren't 4th inches. A lot of them were like
record most 4th down conversions in one game. Yeah. It had to, right? I mean,
it was like 6. I think it was 6. I think it was.
I'm going to make everybody laugh. Did the Chargers even run the ball in that game? I think, what did Herbert throw? Like 65 times or something like that?
Did.
Yeah. Times. I mean, it was like.
It was incredible because I love Austin Eckler. I think Eckler's phenomenal.
I think it was the last like 24 possessions. It was all pass or some stat. I think it was something like that. It was like 20 something straight passes. There was no rushing attempt. Nothing. We talk about all the time about you got to run the ball. Chargers were just going. They were passing, and even in overtime they come back. So, I mean, I could see John's point here to that. But while I have another about 20 or so minutes with the guys here, because I obviously don't want to spoil everything here, and I obviously want to talk on Friday and get our picks and such, I want to ask, because a couple of people have asked me this here throughout the past few days. I mean, for anybody here, who's your MVP in the league? Who's your MVP?
Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to throw out there, I don't know, a TJ Watt, a Cooper Kupp? Anybody want to throw somebody off the board? Or we all just think Aaron Rodgers?
Wide receivers never get MVP.
Yeah, I've been on the Cooper Kupp bandwagon all year, but we just know that there's no way a receiver.
Who's number 2 then? If we're going to all assume Aaron Rodgers, who's number 2?
I'm saying Tom Brady.
Oh,
number 1.
I would have Brady number 2.
It's a shock, right?
Rodgers, Brady.
Yeah.
Donald, who you got? Maybe you got someone else that could maybe get to second.
Oof. Why not Cooper Kupp? Because Cooper Kupp's season was insane.
He had 149 catches.
I've never seen
2,000 yards. I think he had 16 touchdowns. I mean,
I've never seen anything quite like what he did. But Rodgers really, and defensive player of the year is obviously Watt. But you would like to see him get.
I wonder if Watt gets any MVP.
Yeah, you'd like to see him get votes.
He could be a top 5.
Well, I'll give you a second. Despite them missing the postseason, does Jonathan Taylor come in second?
He could get vote. He could get a lot of votes.
Yeah, he might. Because he basically carried that team, right? I mean,
he had a great year. I mean, you could certainly make the case that he would be in the discussion. I mean, them missing the playoffs, I think, hurts him a little bit. I know it's an individual award, but still, I mean, you could definitely make the case.
He had a big game that last week. Maybe that puts him, in that
1,811 yards, 18 touchdowns. I mean, that's, definitely.
But if he goes for like 200 that last game and gets to 2,000 yards, then maybe we're talking about it. But
John
Gonzalez has more yards after contact than anybody had rushing yards in the league.
John Gonzalez has Brady or Rodgers. That's one or two. That's what he
probably. I would have thrown out Kyler Murray had the Cardinals season not kind of
sputtered.
Towards
the early on. But
midway
I don't
through
think
the year,
he had the numbers though. He missed like 4 games, right? 3 or 4 games or something like that.
And then they started to fall apart.
Yeah. Prior to that, he was actually probably number 2.
You know what? John's got a good case though on Brady. 5,316 yards, 43 TDs, 12 INTs. I didn't realize he had 5,300 yards. I'm thinking about that, and those numbers are better than I expected. I thought like 4,400 yards or 4,500 yards. I mean, I thought that, and actually he had somewhat better numbers than Rodgers. Rodgers had 4,115 yards, but he did have just 4 INTs, and his QB rating was 111.9. Brady's was 102. So if you throw QB rating in there, yeah, I think Rodgers 1, Brady 2, maybe Taylor 3, Cup 4, Watt 5. Does anybody have any disagreement with that in terms
That
of
combination of those 5, I think, are
Yeah,
going to get
so good.
Those are the top 5.
Yeah,
and
that's the top 5.
and defensive player of the year, I think it's foregone conclusion, TJ Watt.
Yeah,
Foregone.
and Parsons has got to be
Michael
right
Parsons
up
will
there
get
too.
some votes.
Yeah,
Give me coach of the year. Who's coach of the year?
Good one.
Oh, man, there's a lot. A lot of guys did great jobs. I mean, I know he's not going to do it, but the guy from the Raiders, Bisaccia, he did a great job.
I'll go with Vrabel, number 1 seed. I think they had 89 players play this year on their active roster. I think it was either 59 or 89. The number was the most that have played this year.
It was not actually 91.
91. Okay.
91. They used the most. The Jets had used the
Wow.
second most.
And
And
they're the number 1
gotta be up
seed.
there,
So
too. The Saints, I think only 2 guys played the whole all 17 games.
I think there's 5 to 10 candidates that you can make an argument for.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Zach Taylor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I would too.
Another guy that you know nobody talks about is what Sirianni did with Philly.
I would actually throw Joe Burrow as an
Nobody
outside MVP candidate. He'll never get the MVP.
Oh, yeah.
But
Joe
Burrow's-
Joe Burrow's a good one.
He came on very
Phenomenal
strong
year.
late. That's for sure.
Joe Burrow's a good
Phenomenal
one.
year.
That's a good one. You know, you could throw him into the top 5 for sure. That's actually a good one. I'll get to Ron Laird and then John Gonzalez. Ron Laird said that he's impressed with Dallas's defense. Yeah, I guess that was a good performance. I don't know if anybody's still sold on the Cowboys. John Gonzalez says for him, coach of the year for sure has to be Vrabel. He also adds what Brady did at 44 was phenomenal. Yeah, but John, we were talking about that like for the last 30 years with Brady practically.
Every year we say that. Whoa,
I know. That's what I'm saying. I mean, for every year we say that. He says Zach Taylor would be a good candidate for him for coach of the year. That's another name. Anybody want to throw out there? Because Ron Laird had mentioned him. Anybody want to throw McCarthy 12-5? Anybody want to give him votes?
No, don't give him credit for anything.
Okay. All right, I'm just saying because Ron Laird threw him in there. You know, I know the Cowboys, everyone's going to be biased, but they did have a 12-5 season. I mean, anybody want to throw them in there?
Big fan of the Cardinals. I think Cardinals had a tremendous.
I think
I will
what
credit the
Cowboys
Cowboys
did-
the fact that they turned around their defense from the
But
worst.
Kingsbury, but you know what, though, Zeke Donald? I'm with you. Kingsbury will get votes, but they finished the year, if I'm not mistaken, 4-6.
I think
So-
Kingsbury's closer to the hot seat than he is coach of the year.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll see. I have a feeling. I have a good feeling about them this weekend.
If they win Monday, he definitely won't be on the hot seat. But certainly, if they don't show up and fall
No,
flat,
not this year. I don't even think they'll
Like
get rid
next
of him
year.
this year. But he's
No,
warming up. for
well,
sure.
but going into next season, like for example, if they play Monday night and they lose like 30-13 or something like that, and they wind up again ending 4-7 with the postseason loss, certainly going into next year, he's not going to have 4 or 5 years worth of free time. He's
No.
going to.
Yeah, I think unless they win they'd have to win the Super Bowl this year. I think if they don't get to at least the conference championship game, even with one playoff win, I think you're going to start next year with Kingsbury definitely on the hot seat.
And you know what?
He hasn't been all that impressive.
Do you want to give Tomlin some votes for coach of the year? Anybody want to give Mike Tomlin some coach
he's
of the
done
year?
a
He's
great
going to be up
job.
there.
Yeah, I would give them before I give McCarthy, because McCarthy, like, what did the Cowboys do that, like, what kind of adversity did they face this year? You know, how many injuries? They didn't have.
Ezekiel didn't play great. Maybe that's your adversity.
No, I'm just saying that a couple of guys that were hurt. Nothing
And,
like.
I also have to throw in another coach because, again, speaking of McCarthy, who doesn't get much credit, Bill Belichick. Does Bill Belichick, from anybody here, get some votes? I mean, he did a good job. Also, remember,
of course,
rookie quarterback, right? No, he did a good job. I don't think he'll be in the top 5, but there's been a lot of great jobs this year. I'd
like to see
ton.
Bisaccia get a significant amount of votes because symbolically, all the adversity. I know the record doesn't scream coach of the year, 7-5, but all the things they dealt with on the field and off the field, that does kind of say, you know what, that guy should definitely get at least some votes. I don't know where you rank him. I don't know where you put him in there. But to your point, Chris, there is like 5 to 10 coaches that you
I
say,
don't think
you know
there's
what?
a bad answer.
And
No,
you know what? Wouldn't that be the ultimate, like, whatever towards Gruden by the NFL to give Bashashia, whatever his name is.
I struggle with the name. I struggle with it. So you will.
The coach of the year, the guy that replaced John Gruden after he was thrown out of the league or whatever. This guy comes in and gets coach of the year. That would be the ultimate, because the NFL and him have not been on the same. They're obviously.
Before I get to some closing thoughts and a few other things, going back to coaches on the hot seat, I got to bring up one we didn't talk about. Carolina and Matt Rule. Anybody have a thought on there? What happens with that situation? Because that's the one, going back to what Donald said, coaches that you might have been surprised about that maybe didn't get the axe. What do you guys make of the situation in Carolina? Then I heard this morning that Cam Newton said he only wanted to play for a winning team. So that situation in Carolina.
Too bad winning teams don't want him to play for them.
Right.
I'm just telling you what Cam Newton said. I'm telling you what he said. Yeah. That's not what I'm saying. But what do you guys make of Carolina?
10 years ago, yes.
Yeah.
Well, he's living off the MVP year. But for anybody here, what do you guys think of the Carolina situation?
He's got to be on the hot seat, I would think. He's not getting fired because they already said he's coming back. But
right.
I mean, if he has another bad year, but to the flip side on him, look what he's had to work with with the quarterback, right? I mean, we're talking about Sam Darnold, Cam Newton. CMC's been hurt every year, like he always.
I was going to say we're talking about Barkley. That guy's hurt every year.
Yeah, it's sad because that guy's 2,000 yards every year if he's healthy, but.
Did he deserve to fire Brady though? I don't think he should have fired him.
No, I don't think so. Definitely wasn't. Like I said,
I think there was more to. I think there was more to the story than just performance as to why they fired Joe Brady. I think that because all this went down right after the college season ended, and we were going through the cycle of college coaches, and I think Brady was trying to interview at colleges. And I think Matt Rule said, if you're not going to be all in here, you could get the what out.
Right.
So I think there's something behind that.
Yep.
Let me throw in one more coach also, again, because we've talked a lot about this team. They're on the outside looking in for the postseason. We know they're not going to make the change, but what do you guys make of Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland?
I got no issue with Stefanski. I think Stefanski's a good coach. They need a quarterback.
Yeah. So you guys don't think that he's on the hot seat or vulnerable? Anybody just want to make it clear? Anybody? Nobody?
I think listen, if they don't make the playoffs next year, but it depends on who they bring in. Are they running again with Baker? I think they need to bring somebody else in because Baker, either he's not playing well or he gets hurt. So
well, Stefanski came out, again, it's early, but he came out and said he endorses Mayfield to be the starter next year. I don't know what that means to anybody, but he's already come out and said that he endorses him to be the quarterback.
That means he'll be the starter unless we find something else, I think. But I think if they don't make the playoffs next year,
that's what I said.
I think Stefanski is one of those other ones. I mean, they got a good roster. It's not like, an excuse like Carolina or something. They got a really good roster. They could, yeah. I mean, that should be a playoff team. There's no excuse.
Yeah.
Unless but they got to get a quarterback. I mean,
and I gotta go with Ron Laird because we've omitted a coach that he would like to see be the coach of the year. And obviously, Ron is a huge Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. He thinks that Bruce Arians should be the coach of the year because, well, he's a Bucs fan. But actually, the Bucs had a good year. I mean, does anybody give? Nobody. So Bruce Arians is the coach of the year.
When Tom Brady is your when Tom Brady is
here we go.
When Tom Brady is your quarterback, you're automatically eliminated. That people could. Why has nobody said Matt LaFleur as coach of the year? Because he's got Aaron Rodgers
or Andy Reid in Kansas City, right? Nobody's mentioned him.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, because he's got Patrick Mahomes. When you got a quarterback of that caliber playing the way they do, you're not in the running for coach of the year. You're just not.
Not with that roster. That team is absolutely stacked.
Yeah, Tampa Bay stacked to the gills.
Yeah.
And John Gonzalez has a few comments I want to get in here. So he says that he thinks Rule is safe. He'll get the one more year.
Yep.
He agrees with Chris on Cleveland and Stefanski, and he says his prediction for Matt Rule is that he'll be back in college by 2023. That's the John Gonzalez prediction on Matt Rule. Anybody?
It's fair.
All right.
Fair, but it also depends on what they end up doing at the quarterback position next year.
I don't know.
It's like they're rolling back with Darnold because of the fifth-year option.
But if they draft, let's say if they draft one of the guys at 9, right? Because they might draft a quarterback. They got the 9.
I think they will.
If they do, does that give Rule more time or less time?
I think it does buy him. I think it will buy him time. I really do.
Let me ask you.
Chris. Good point, Chris.
Let me ask you one more question before I get to closing thoughts, and I want to go back to the Raiders because, like I said, picks. I want to pick everything Friday because I want to get the full gang. I want to see over-unders, and I want to digest because there was a lot to recap, obviously, today with the news of Joe Judge being out as Giants coach, plus some other coaches. So I wanted to kind of digest and get all of that. But hypothetically, let's say the Raiders and Rich Bisaccia part ways. For you guys, and I feel like I've asked this question before, at least on the Sunday shows, but let's say for whatever reason the Raiders lose on Saturday, they decide to part ways with Bisaccia. They want to make the big splash. For anybody here, would Rich Bisaccia be a head coaching candidate for any of these vacancies out there?
I think he'll get an interview, but I don't know if he. We're talking about. I think that'll be 7 openings now. If we're counting,
if they win Saturday, it's a moot point because if they win a playoff game on the road, you're not getting rid of the coach. But if they lose somehow and they play poorly, let's say they decide to part ways over the weekend after the game, that job is open and he took a team to a postseason. I mean, somebody might want to take a feeler on him, whether it's Miami, Minnesota, Jackson, anybody else.
I think he'll definitely get an interview. I don't know if he'll get one of the other 6 jobs. I'll put it at that. And I'll tell you right now, if they let Bisaccia go, the Vegas Raiders are the sexiest job out there.
Well, that's why, again, let's say they don't win Saturday and they're out of the postseason. That franchise might want to say, you know what? We want to make a big splash. I think you made that point. I think Chris made that point early on in the discussion. But for anybody else here, would anybody think that Bisaccia would get one of these openings if the Raiders and him parted ways should they lose Saturday? I mean, I know it's a proposition to throw out there, but it could happen theoretically. Anybody have a different thought?
I don't know. I don't think there's enough. I mean, he did a great job, so I don't want to say he won't, but I think what Justin's saying, I think he'll get an interview for sure at some of these places, and I think especially a place like Chicago. And I think Flores is like, I always keep going with Flores in Chicago just because of Chicago, the tough defense, like I just see him going there for some reason. But so maybe he would go there too. I think he's got that attitude as well. He was a special teams guy though, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's like Justin said, he'll get an interview or two, but I don't know if he'll get the job because there's so many other bigger names that people would go to, So,
and I have another comment from somebody that actually missed us tonight, missed being on, and that is none other than the brute force Brad Weiss. He has now jumped in. He now wants to make his announcement for what he wants to say for Friday. So he says, hey guys, sorry I missed tonight. I had to coach, which is what I said. He got 2 wins, though, with Level Up, so congratulations on that. He said right now that the Miami Dolphins are his new dumbest team in football for firing Brian Flores. And he says, don't worry, I'll be there Friday, and the upset siren will be coming on at least once. But here's my point on the upset siren. If you're in the postseason, everybody's in the postseason. We're down to 14 teams, 12 that are playing between Saturday, Sunday, and now Monday. Is it really an upset?
Absolutely. If Pittsburgh beats Kansas City being a 14-point underdog? Or
12.5.
Right. Or if Philly beats Tampa Bay, I think that's an upset too. Some of the other games, I think you're right.
Looking at the other spreads.
I think New England Buffalo is a toss-up. I think San Francisco Dallas is a toss-up. I think the Rams Cardinals is a toss-up potentially, or maybe a slight edge to the Rams. I think the Raiders and Bengals, you could make a case for either of those teams winning. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I just look at it like
there's maybe 2 or 3 that would be, like if he's going to. Listen, if he uses that siren on the Patriots upsetting Buffalo.
I'm going to say, listen, the brute force.
You got to.
The only teams with merit would be, like Chris said, a Philadelphia victory over Tampa or Pittsburgh over
we got to tell
Kansas City. I mean, I guess I guess from a spread standpoint, you could say Raiders over Bengals is an upset because the spread is 5.5.
But I don't feel
But I don't feel like it is. I agree.
Me either. And
It's
we'll
right
get to that
there.
for
It's
Friday.
like
We'll definitely
borderline.
get to that. But before we get to closing thoughts, I want to read off a few more things from John Gonzalez, and we'll see if the Brew Force has a response to that, because I have a feeling Brad is going to respond to this because he is watching right now. And John again goes on and says, rulers on the college bus. Yeah, John, we've talked about that quite a bit. I mean, obviously, it doesn't look good for him. He says that he thinks that at the least Bisaccia could be a coordinator somewhere. Doesn't know if he'll be a head coach. Yeah, I think that's what the guys are saying. And he says once Harbaugh is off the table, then the dominoes will fall. So he believes in his mind, John Gonzalez, that it's all about Harbaugh. Before I get to closing thoughts, does anybody disagree with that Harbaugh is the one that's holding the cards for these teams like the Giants and Miami, and I'll even throw in there the Bears? I mean, does anybody buy into that?
No, I 100% agree.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because also too a recruit's father came out saying that he was told by Jim Harbaugh, I may actually entertain NFL offers this year. So,
Okay.
while I don't think it's a definite that he leaves Michigan, he does hold the cards. He's either going to sign because he I think he took a pay cut this past year at Michigan.
Well, I think he donated his money from the bonuses.
They renegotiated.
They renegotiated.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, in one sense, because of what's going on, again, and this is from somebody who covers college sports, certainly at the much, much lower level than at where Mr. Harbaugh is. These colleges, because people aren't enrolling as much as they did pre-COVID, if there's anybody that has been hurt most by COVID, it's not the professional sports leagues, because you have licensing, you have advertising, you have your network TV deals. It's all these colleges because people aren't enrolling even at that level. So you know what? Harbaugh might look at it and say, you know what? I can get $9-10 million a year in the NFL. I don't have to deal with recruiting. I don't have to deal with all that 24/7 stuff. And he can come back to the league. Maybe there's unfinished business. I mean, Pete Carroll came back. We saw the success. So, I mean, you know.
All right, here's a question about Harbaugh before we jump off of him.
Sure.
What do you guys think are the top two jobs that he says, if they offer me the money, if they offer me what I want, I'm going to that job, because that is perfect.
Just
I say for Harbaugh, Raiders, Bears, or Michigan.
Michigan
Staying.
You mean
Okay,
staying
okay.
in Michigan? Okay, so Raiders, Michigan are staying. Okay, what do you guys think?
You know what? I'm going to be slightly different, because I'm going to leave the Raiders out for now, just because they're in the
I'm going to say he
postseason.
goes to Miami.
I'm going to say Miami or Chicago. Chicago because he played there. Miami just because of the weather, the owner, the city. I think people would want to go and coach in Florida. I just think so. I think that would be my two. I'm going to leave the Raiders out for now, because the Raiders are still alive. And if they win Saturday, they ain't changing coaches. I just don't think they're changing coaches.
I agree.
And Brad Rice has another comment in here. So the Brew Force has another comment. Now he's pumped up. So the Brew Force has to say, here's all I have to say is, if Tom Bryce says, meaning me, obviously, a team is favored to win, the underdog, in my mind, is an upset. See everyone Friday. Boy, the Brew Force, you almost sound like you're one of my professional wrestlers that come on the show each and every week. Almost like giving us like
It's
a
like a mic drop. See you
He's
Friday.
already telling you. He's already telling you. He's picking like New England, or he's going to pick.
Look, to his point,
Arizona.
a road playoff win, that's an upset.
But you know what, though? I have a disagreement.
I don't know if it's a siren upset with the.
But see,
graphic
I have
and
a
everything.
this is where I disagree real quick, because wasn't there the stat? Was it Francesa that said it once, or I might have heard it on one of the NFL Network shows, that road teams in the postseason of late beat the home teams more than half the time. So how can I, on paper, say it's the upset siren? Because a lot of these road teams, we're going to get one team that we didn't see coming this weekend and win. We're bound to not. I don't see every home team. Watch me eat my words, but I don't see every home team winning Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
No, I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying you're playing for home field advantage, so there's got to be something there.
No, but I mean, the Patriots beat the Bills already in Buffalo. Mm-hmm. So if they beat them this week, is it going to be like, oh my God, that was an upset?
No.
I don't even know what Buffalo is right now. Like,
Right,
you
I don't
don't
know.
trust them 1 week to the next.
Hey, listen, the last 4 weeks, who did they really beat? They beat Carolina. They beat Atlanta. They beat the Jets.
And very
They should put
unimpressively.
50 up on the Jets this week.
Yeah.
How
They
bad the
didn't-
Jets played.
John Gonzalez, before I want to get to college football national championship, real quick thought on that, then closing thoughts. John Gonzalez agrees with me on the playoffs. Yeah, John, it's postseason. This is to me not the same thing as the Texans and the Titans or the Jaguars and the Colts. Everybody can win if you're in the postseason. He says for Harbaugh, his two are the Giants and Bears. I don't fully agree with that. The Bears, I think, are one of the two, and he says he's taking personally on the brute forces challenge. So that's certainly that's John. I'll let John speak for himself on that. Thank you, John, for the comments on that. But before we get out of here, for our college football guys here, before we get closing thoughts here, what do you guys think here?
Finally,
George?
Saban goes down.
Surprise.
What do you think?
Patrick was right. Let's give him
Right.
some credit.
Look, a broken clock is right twice a day. So
Georgia's defense, man.
yeah.
Georgia's defense was terrific.
Fantastic.
They were
Bennett
terrific,
made
and-
enough
and-
plays at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
but how
wasn't-
many of those
look,
guys are going to be in the NFL next
Stetson
year,
Bennett,
right?
but he made enough throws at the end. But it was really, to Don's point, it was Georgia's defensive line and their linebackers.
But credit to Bennett. He came alive in the second half. Made some
Was that
big time
Bryce Young's
throws.
worst game as he played this year?
It's not really his fault. I mean, his
Not
wide
his fault,
receivers
but
all
at
got
halftime,
hurt. I mean,
statistically,
Yeah.
guy towards the ACL. That was really
Yeah,
tore it.
losing Jamison Williams, because that was that 40-yard catch to Jamison Williams was really the first big play of the game, and he immediately goes out with the ACL injury, and you could tell it just takes the air out of Alabama and the inexperience at receiver, because you were also missing John Mechie. That was huge. So not having your top two wide receivers, Robinson really couldn't get going on the ground. He had some runs, but Georgia was able to gash them with the run game in the second half, and that's what opened up for Stetson Bennett to make the plays. And credit to Georgia.
and the
I
offensive.
don't blame.
Not big,
I don't
Donald.
blame
Go
him
ahead,
at all.
Donald.
I don't
Jump
blame
in.
him at all. I mean, listen, he obviously he was under immense pressure from the defense, but they was taking forever for the routes to develop. His receivers just weren't getting open, and when they were getting open, they weren't running the right route, or they kind of just
inexperience.
seemed to be kind of messy. Yeah, it was a little bit inexperienced. There's a couple of plays there. There's for instance, there was one play where he was they were really close to the end zone, and then the receiver took a really long route to get open, and then Young had to throw incomplete. He was really upset by it, but it wasn't his fault. It was just an experience. Had they had their number one and number two receivers, then I think it would have been a different story. But at the end of the day, Georgia were the favorites going into it. Actually, surprisingly, I'd never ever counted.
Or were they 3-point favorites? I
Saban
think?
out.
2.5.
Yeah.
2.5 closed.
Yeah. So listen, their defense was just special on the day. It was just great.
And think about how great Georgia's defense was this year.
Except
think of the
one
guys.
game. Except the one game this year.
Right, against
the
Alabama.
championship game. Yep.
But go back. Look who they lost last year, if you guys remember, right? Both their starting cornerbacks were first-round picks. They lost the edge rusher that went to the Giants.
Ojulari.
Right.
They-
I mean, he
yeah.
didn't end up doing much there, but they lost a lot of guys.
Actually, I
man.
like
Sorry, Donald.
Ojulari. I actually like Ojulari.
Yeah, I did too. I was hoping the Jets would have got him, but you know,
I thought the most impressive thing in the second half was the fact that the offensive coordinator for Georgia could have slowed the game down, and he chose to air it out a little bit, albeit after
They took
the
some
running
chances.
backs
They
gashed
definitely
them,
took
but
some chances, which you kind
they
of
could
weren't
have-
expecting.
they could have tried to take the air out and just tried to, the old 3 yards in a cloud of dust again, Tom. But to their credit, they gave the keys to Stetson Bennett, and the mailman delivered. They call him the mailman.
His story is pretty good. I can see them making a movie about it.
And I couldn't
he was
believe
at one
that,
point
and I
he was seventh string
incredible.
I
in his
couldn't.
career.
I couldn't believe, because we were talking about this in the Sportswire Radio group, and shout out to everybody that's in the Twitter group. We have like 30-something people, and so I want to shout everybody out that isn't here with us. But I couldn't believe it. I was hearing this on the radio again overnight. 1981 was the last time Georgia had won the national championship. And I'm thinking to myself, they had a lot of 10-win teams. And you know what? Mark Richt never led them to the big win. So you know what? I didn't really think Georgia with their history. So it almost meant that Tennessee, Auburn won the national championship in the SEC before. Well, Florida won a couple times. But all those teams.
But look at who Kirby Smart is winning with at quarterback. Jake Fromm.
Right, sorry to hear, Donald, about the Jake Fromm.
I mean, he's doing it his way. He's got a specific theory on how to coach up the defense.
And if you're on Twitter, there was plenty of calls for JT Daniels.
Yeah, I was one of them calling it in the semifinal. I thought JT Daniels was going to come out there,
and this was also only what do you call it? The coach's only his second loss against a former disciple. Nick Saban, right? He lost to A&M with what's his name, and now, so this was only his second loss against somebody who coached under him.
Well, listen, that's another guy that you don't see him losing these spots. Why? When I asked it on Friday, everybody was like Bama, except Patrick. So Patrick, but I wouldn't consider that an upset special. That I would not consider the siren.
They were favorites, right? How can we call it?
That's why I said that.
We all picked the underdogs. Patrick was the only one to pick the favorite.
Well, listen, that's why smart money was on Patrick.
So that's so we can't give him that much credit.
Oh, no, I wouldn't put any money on that pick. I wouldn't put money on that pick at all.
I think the majority of America was going with Alabama, right?
I'll tell you what, I'm definitely looking forward to Friday night. I'm looking forward to our NFL picks with the rest of the gang. I'm certainly excited to see about the brute force and whatever he has on the video screen. Everybody that has joined us, and shout outs to Alice Hayes, Ron Laird, John Gonzalez, obviously. So this is a bit of what we'll talk about on Friday's show. Obviously, we'll pick all the games. If there's more developments, we'll certainly talk about that. Maybe we'll throw in a baseball thought or two. Obviously, Keith Hernandez. And Ron Laird has one more comment, and he says, said first win against Alabama assistant was Jimbo at LSU. So that's what he says for Alabama. I guess an Alabama assistant was Jimbo, was LSU. That was Ron Laird's thought. So Ron's chimed in, of course, because Ron knows all this stuff. But yeah, we'll definitely talk. We'll get more into it maybe Friday, a thought or two on Keith Hernandez getting inducted into the Mets Hall of Fame. Don Maynard, I mean, did anybody of us really see Don Maynard? I mean, I didn't really jump into that, but these are some of the things we talked about. And obviously, I'm looking forward to Friday's show again, 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. We'll be live on my Facebook. Also want to plug Twitter at Thomas Bryce 2017. Also want to plug all the guys' Twitters here before we get closing thoughts. Justin Gianelli. Also follow his baseball banter page. Donald Stewart, it's Pinstripe Chronicles, at Stripe Chronicles, at Talking Rivals, at Liftoff Jets, and follow the guys also respectively. So I'm going to give closing thoughts here. And if you guys want to say anything you want to plug, anything I missed, anything you guys want to address specifically, definitely do that. Donald, I'm going with you. Always good to have you, my friend. Great job with the Pinstripe Chronicles show here this past afternoon or evening, depending where you are. And obviously, I know you guys aren't churning them out as much as we used to get them, but I'm sure that'll change in a few months when eventually we get a baseball season. But I want to turn it over to you, my friend. I want to give you closing thoughts, plug your Twitter, anything else you want to plug that you write out there. And I can't thank you enough, and the floor is yours, my friend.
Thanks so much, Reverend. Listen, you can find me at dstewart267. I write for Last Word on Sports.com for basketball, so you can find me on that. And as Stripe Chronicles, we're kind of just waiting for stuff to talk about right now because there's nothing much to talk about. So I guess today we were talking about Rachel Balkovic.
I was interested in that. That was interesting. That was an interesting
Yankee
discussion
skipper.
tonight.
I think it's a great thing for women breaking into the sport because obviously we've seen it already in basketball. So it was really good that this is happening in baseball too. So credit to the Yankees for kind of breaking that barrier. So she's gonna be special. I think she's someone to watch out for. So that's what we were talking about. And today's a great day because Joe Judge is gone and I can breathe again because I've been pretty miserable for a long time now. So that's all for me. But thanks so much, guys. I've had a blast.
Safe to say you got a late Christmas gift then today, right?
It was. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. So that's all great stuff. Everybody can follow again Donald on Twitter at DAStewart267. So make sure you definitely follow Donald and, of course, the Stripe Chronicles. So thank you, Donald, and we'll definitely talk with you soon. And Justin, my friend, I want to give you the floor, my friend. I want to give you some closing thoughts. Anything you want to plug, anything baseball banter, definitely feel free to plug. I know we'll get some episodes here coming up. I think we're looking at the NL Central next and our all-time top 4 players for each team in the division. So very excited about that. And of course, you can listen to the baseball banter probably at some point tomorrow morning because I'm going to replay your show again because I enjoyed it that much. But I want to give you the floor. Any closing thoughts, anything you want to plug on social media, and I can't thank you enough. And the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Tom. Yeah, we're gonna rock and roll with the NL Central tomorrow, and then on Saturday get to the National League West. So we're gonna go through the Mount Rushmore for the Reds, Cubs, Cardinals, Pirates, and Brewers. And you can follow me on my personal Twitter at JGNelly12 and at BBallBanterSM. And yeah, looking forward to dropping the new episode tomorrow. I'll hand it over to you at some point, probably tomorrow night. And away we go. Just fill the time. I will start off by getting into the whole Keith Hernandez jersey retirement to start the show, and then obviously we're going to have some form of labor negotiations come Thursday, but I'll probably briefly mention that on Saturday. But other than that, that's where you can find me on my Twitter, so you can hit me up there. And please let's get the debates going. I like the conversation, the back and forth from the first episode. So the debates are always fun.
And we got to get you, Justin, on the Talking Rivals show where you guys can just riff off some of these things. Because I heard the guys today talk about some of their all-time players in the AL East, and it made me think Talking Rivals and baseball banter would be a fun discussion with that. I'm so intrigued about your NL Central picks because I am so curious where you go on the Cincinnati Reds and the Milwaukee Brewers, because those are the two teams I'm looking at your top 4, so intriguing. I'm just so intrigued because they both have interesting history. Obviously, the Reds have a longer history, but the Brewers have an interesting history as well. So I'm really intrigued. And obviously, the guys did it a little differently. They went by position for each team, but I'm very curious to see where you guys end up. And of course, maybe one day Talking Rivals meets baseball banter. But Justin, keep up the great work. Looking forward to Friday, looking forward to picks, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow night's show as well. So I want to give Patrick you the floor, my friend. Anything else you want to plug on social media, anything book related, anything Talking Rivals, I want to give you the floor. I can't thank you enough for all that you do for us here on Sportswire Radio. And cheap plug, listen.
Straight from the library.
In the words of Mick Foley, we got a cheap pop, but a good pop. So that's how.
No, I appreciate it, Tom. As always, it's great to be with Justin, with Donald, and Chris. Thank you as always. Book's doing well. It's available on Amazon. What else? At Patrick Trotty, you can find me. Baseball takes, some writing stuff, and then at Talking Rivals. Every Monday we're doing an episode, and like you teased out, we are onto the AL Central. So we are definitely, you could tell we're AL fans because we're doing AL first, or Justin's doing the NL Mount Rushmore. But that would be cool. We could get Justin on and talk some Mets when we do the NL East.
Yeah.
We're doing the all-time teams, so.
Sure.
Oh, I'm so excited about the AL Central. In fact, I'm excited where you go with the Kansas City Royals, believe it or not.
Yeah, the Royals had some dynasty stuff in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yep.
With their battles with the Yankees, and then they had some recent success with Ned Yost. And,
right?
Yeah.
George Bennett third. I think that's an easy one.
Yep.
Frank White, Willie Wilson, maybe. Yep. Hopefully, I have to give a cheap pop to somebody I've actually interviewed that I'm sure is going to be in your pitcher list. Mark Gubizar, somebody I actually interviewed.
We're doing just one pitcher, so we're going to name 3 or 4. But we're trying to do an all-time, just one.
Well, Mark has to be in the discussion because Mark
he was. I started looking it up, and he's right up there.
Oh, and Saberhagen too.
Yep. Saberhagen, Zach Greinke.
How about one Chris is going to know? Dennis Leonard.
Oh yeah, going a little further back, sure.
So it's going to be tough to winnow it down just to one.
Kevin Apier is probably going to be the guy.
Sometimes it comes down to longevity.
Kevin Napier, I think, would be right up in there also. Kevin Napier, former Met. So
that'll be coming out next Monday.
I think me and Patrick had a good discussion with Boston's pitcher between
yes.
and Pedro.
And then Cy Young. I mean, I heard he's pretty decent.
You threw a Wakefield mention because Wakefield won like 180-something games.
Yeah, he's up there. I think he's second, right, in wins?
Yeah, if it wasn't for Aaron Bleeping Boone, he might have been higher on the list.
But the Royals is the one I'm really intrigued about because the Royals have such a fascinating history because you wouldn't scream out. It's not the Indians, not the White Sox, legacy franchise, but they had some like in between. So I can't wait for that. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for that. And Chris, I want to give you the floor. I want to give you any social media. Please plug it. Also, I'm looking forward to obviously the Liftoff Jet Show. I'm sure we'll get something here tomorrow night or Thursday. We'll definitely look forward to playing that. So for you, my friend, any closing thoughts, please share. And I can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, guys. Great conversation tonight. Tomorrow night, me and Charmin should be giving you the Liftoff Jet Show. We're going to probably preview the playoff week. The wild card week, excuse me, and we'll give our thoughts on that and some kind of closing thoughts on the Jets, but not a full review of the season. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to talking rivals with Patrick, getting into the AL Central. I love looking back at these teams because, like you said, Kansas City is a great example, right? Kansas City, people remember them like the last 20 years of being not that great, but listen, in the 80s. The 80s, they were almost the equivalent to the Yankees, Red Sox, Yankees, Royals. I mean, they were big time rivals.
I think it was 7 postseasons in 10 years?
Was it Hal McRae going into left field, taking Willie Randolph out?
Yep.
Wasn't John Mayberry on the Royals also, I think, for a little while? John Mayberry. Dan Quisenberry. Cannot forget about the Quiz.
That guy was unhittable for a few years. I mean,
they had a good run. I remember because I had Mark on. I interviewed Mark, and I think it was after '89 is when they kind of like sputtered a bit. That's when the franchise kind of
started to.
But I remember Mark. I think Mark used the term. The Royals actually copied the Dodgers' way of building the farm system because I think when the Royals, I think Mark had said that the Royals, in terms of how they scouted, they picked up off all what the Dodgers used to do. It was the academy, it was the Dominican Republic, and that's how they were able to pick up all those different players. So that's why the Royals I'm so fascinated by us. But again, there's going to be many more teams that the guy's going to go through here, and you can check it out. I also want to make sure Cheap Pop, sportinarium.com/player. You can check all of these great shows. When we played, obviously their podcasts are available on like Anchor and Spotify and iTunes, but for us, when we get to hear it on sportinarium.com/player. So if you are listening to us on the audio end here, please stick with us because these great shows are going to be here tomorrow and throughout the week. So make sure you do that. So everybody, I hope you have a great night. I hope you stay warm, stay safe out there. Obviously very cold in the tri-state area if you're in the UK. Also, I know it's very cold, so make sure you stay safe out there as well. And we'll be back here Friday Night Live. We'll be back here, of course, with the entire gang, including Billy McInerney and the Brute Force Brad Weiss. I want to thank again John Gonzalez for his words and Ron Laird and Alice Hayes, and everybody else that tuned in. I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportzwire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryson. If you're on sportinarium.com/play, well, you're going to get the Talking Rivals again because I want to play something quick, and I figured why not play the boys, and we'll get the baseball banter right afterwards. So that's what you can listen to. I thank you, everybody, for watching and listening to this, and we'll be back here Friday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be with Patrick Trotti, Chris Pizzea, and Justin Gianelli. I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. Good night, everyone.